We have a special treat for you today. We are doing a playlist about our favorite drinking moments in opera. I bet you didn't know there's actually quite a few. We've got a playlist of 10 songs that we're going to talk about today, but I found an additional 15 songs that you will get to enjoy on our YouTube page.
Hello, this is Opera Unbound, a podcast that breaks the barriers between opera singers and the audience. We will cover the process, challenges, stereotypes, and inspirations associated with opera.
If you like the content that we're putting out and you'd love to see more, make sure you subscribe to our channel as well as share it with all your friends. This is a perfect time for us to post this with all the holidays coming up, because not only is there a lot of drinking that happens typically, but also this is a great way to avoid really awkward conversations with your family about political or religious or whatever. When they start going down that road, you say like, hey, I heard about this really cool thing in opera. It's this drinking song, and you can divert the conversation into something that might be a little bit more fruitful than raging with your family member who believes the opposite of you.
Yes, it's our gift to you. Your free get out of political jail card. I don't think we can start this list in any other way than with the famous La Traviata Brindisi, Libiamo. I'm going to tell a little bit of the backstory of La Traviata first, and then we will listen to this wonderful duet. So, La Traviata was written by Verdi in 1853. It's also known as The Fallen Woman. La Traviata tells the story of the tragic love between the courtesan Violetta and her romantic interest, Alfredo. The entire thing, the entire opera kind of plays on the hypocrisy of the upper class and fashionable society. In this scene specifically, Violetta is throwing a lavish party at her Paris salon to celebrate her recovery from an illness. And I just have to asterisk that because she's still sick.
Yeah.
Her friend Gaston has brought one of his friends, Alfredo, a young bourgeoisie, to the party. And Alfredo has long admired her. And Gaston tells Violetta this, and that he came to her house every day while she was ill. Alfredo admits his feelings for Violetta to her. Now, this is kind of awkward because Violetta has a current lover, the Baron Duval, who is waiting to escort her into the actual party. And once there, the Baron, is asked to give a toast but refuses. And the crowd turns to Alfredo, and he agrees to actually sing a song as a toast, which is this Brindisi. I'm just going to give you a couple of the lines in this. I'm not going to translate the whole thing. Some key things. The first line he says is Libiamo nel lieti calici, which means let's drink from this joyous chalice. And another thing he says is Libiamo amor fra I calici più caldi baci avrà. And that means let's drink to love, to wine, and the warmth of our kisses. And then later on, everybody in the party joins in and says Godiam la tazza e il cantico la notte a bello, il riso in questo paradiso ne scopra il nuovo dì, which means let's enjoy the cup of wine and singing and the beautiful night and laughter. In this paradise, we will discover a new day. So this is just all around an incredibly joyous, fun scene. Now, when it comes to the music, it just has a great, very memorable melody. Even if you've only seen it once, you will probably know it and hum it. It's just so catchy. It's in a waltz meter. It's light and bouncy. The melody features turns and grace notes, which add an extra layer of joy. And even the turns in particular, da 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 da, mimic laughter. And then that's juxtaposed against the portamenti that Violetta and Alfredo do, which give this air of romance. And on top of that, portamenti giving this romance, the violins accent particular words. You'll hear it when each of them is doing their solo lines. In the first one with Alfredo, it's fremiti in core. The violins go bada, bada. And then with Violetta, it's rapido in muore. And that underpins their desire for each other. Another touch of glory in this scene is the use of cymbals, which you don't actually have that much in opera up to this time, unless it's like this big celebratory scene. So I think that just really puts the cherry on top.
Totally. And this is just really the beginning of a great scene between Alfredo and Violetta, their duet that comes after this. It's one of my favorite parts of the opera. And again, if you were to watch more of the show, it's very melodic, just like this one is. Their duet, it gets quoted more in the show, so it's that whole idea of reprising melodic ideas and bringing you back to moments. And here's a thing that some of you might notice as you listen to this. It's almost as if you hear this thing really regularly if you listen to our podcast, because maybe just maybe, we clipped a little snippet from it for our intro music. And actually, the outro music is from later in the opera. It's Violetta's aria, the beginning of Addio bel passato, the little interlude before she starts singing. So it's a little behind-the-scenes stuff there. This is one of the big ones that everybody sings. And whenever you go to an opera-themed party and they're like, hey, can you sing us a drinking song? 99.9% of the time, this is what we sing.
Yep, absolutely.
This excerpt comes from the 2019 production of La Traviata at the Opéra Nationale de Paris. Violetta is sung by Pretty Endy, Alfredo is sung by Benjamin Bernheim, and the orchestra and chorus are conducted by Michel Mariotti.
The second one in our list, I don't know that it's as well known, but it's obviously a favorite of mine because we're going to use my recording.
Yep.
The second one is Il segreto per essere felici from Lucrezia Borgia by Donizetti. This was composed in 1833. And yes, it does tell the story of Lucrezia Borgia and her infamous amount of murder. She was known to go to whatever lengths to hold on to power while she was alive. The story really centers around Lucrezia and Gennaro, who's the tenor, of course. There's this, it's weird because like Gennaro like has feelings for Lucrezia, but Lucrezia turns out to be his mom.
Yeah, that's an Akko Taco.
This aria comes very close to the end of the opera, and they've all gone to a party at Lucrezia's palace, and Gennaro was warned not to go to this party. But Orsini, his best friend, is like, oh, come on, like, what are you worried about? Nothing. Just enjoy life. If you're always worrying about, like, what's going to happen, you'll never have any fun. Generally, his character. He is at this party, he's challenged to write a song on the spot, which he's been known to do before. This is like his party trick. True to his character, the words of the party or of the poem are: the secret to happiness is not to overthink things and just enjoy the here and now. So he leads the party in this drinking song. The song is interrupted by an ominous voice outside. And Orsini, it's probably just a practical joke that some girls are playing on us. And then he continues with the song. Afterwards, they've all been drinking wine and it was poison.
Dun, dun, dun.
And Lucrezia comes in and she's like, ha 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 ha, you drank poisonous wine. Everyone dies.
Plot twist.
she tries to get Gennaro to take an antidote that she has. And no, man, I'm going to die with all my friends. But more about the specific music of this. It is also in a dance meter. You'll find that a lot of drinking songs are in dance meters. Because they kind of evoke that joyful nature to them. Also features turn ornaments like the Libbiamo and Portamenti, but the Portamenti in this song is more about laughter, because Orsini is referencing people who are thinking about the future and stuff and how he like ridicules them and such. I hope you enjoy this recording. It was made with Puget Sound Concert Opera in 2018. They take arrangements and slim them down for a smaller chamber-like orchestra. I think we had piano, flute, cello, and violin.
Nice.
I, Contralto Rachel Moss, will be singing Il segreto per essere felice, accompanied by John Burkhart on the piano and Jenna Calixto on flute.
Il segreto per essere felici, dove prova l'insegno gli amici, se lo sereno sei povero il cielo, ogni tempo sia caldo sia gelo, scherzo per volere gli insanni, e si non devo loro pensiero, si non devo a pensare, e se non devo loro pensiero. Non corriamo in cielo domani, se questo cielo è tutto bene.
Let's move on to our next one, which comes from Floto's opera Marta. And this show follows a similar pattern in opera where people are not who they say they are. It revolves around Lady Harriet, the soprano. I know, shocker. She and her servant Nancy, they disguise themselves because Lady Harriet is a maid to Queen Anne. And they want to go out and be with the people, essentially, instead of do this whole royalty thing. And so the two of them go out, they're disguised, they have different names and all this stuff, and they end up meeting Lionel and Plunkett. Okay, so they start falling in love with each other. Later on in the show, Lord Tristan figures out that who they actually are and tries to call him out on it, but they eventually escape. And we get to the beginning of the third act, which is where this aria comes in, and Plunkett is out hunting with the guys, and he has a very simple question for them. He says, "So, tell me this, fellas. Why are all the men in Britain strong and ready for battle?" And he basically is like, it's a simple answer. It's porter beer. I don't know how scientifically sound that is. I don't think that the British are enhanced solely by porter beer, and that's what they live off of.
I mean, I don't know. It's a fortifying beverage.
Yeah, it's pretty hearty and so he talks about how the English hops and the malt and the brownness of the ale and all that, they are the salt and spices of life, and hurrah, tra-la-la-la-la, He gets progressively a little bit, the way I sing it, I get a little bit more and more drunk as I sing it. Because I envision it as him having a few, they're sitting around and saying, "You know what, guys? This is why we're strong, okay? Like, just listen." Like, he's already kind of there, and then it's hitting him harder. So, there's some musical things that I really love about this. It's very simple. Again, it's in 3, which is what waltzes are. It's not a waltz, but it's in 3 or 6/8, depending on how you want to look at it. And it's a pretty simple melody, but it's actually really rangy. Mm-hmm. It's almost 2 octaves, which men don't usually have a lot of stuff like that.
That must be nice.
Yeah, I know. Although when I do it, I make it 2 octaves because I like on the second time when he has the high note, I extend it. But
excellent.
And then the men that are on there with him, they support him, and at the end they're like, "Hurrah, hurrah, hurrah, der Porter beer," and all this stuff. They're all chugging along with them. So
Yes, and that is the part of the aria that we will be using for the excerpt.
Yep.
From the 1996 Cologne Radio Orchestra recording, we will hear Lass mich euch fragen, sung by Franz Halvalata and the Cologne Radio Chorus.
Hurra, dem Hopfen, hurra, dem Malz, sie sind des Lebens Würz und Salz. Hurra! Tra-la-la-la-la-la-la-la, hurra, hurra, dem Hopfen, dem Hopfen, hurra, hurra, dem Hopfen, dem Hopfen, hurra!
next is À quel dîner from La Pericole, which of course is from Offenbach. And I just want to tell a really quick story about this show. I actually was in this show in 2017?
Yeah, I think so.
Tacoma Opera. This was a total train wreck for me personally. Not only was it a company debut, like train wreck for the rehearsal process, and you'll understand why. So I ended up getting walking pneumonia
Oh my God.
during the rehearsal process. I'm like trying to not get other people sick. I'm also trying to rehearse. I'm trying to make a good impression. Probably not doing very well since they haven't hired me since.
I wouldn't
but
say that's why.
I remember there was one moment where there was this trio between me and these two other guys in the show, and I literally was I was aware that I was in a building, and I knew that words were coming out of my mouth. My body was like just doing whatever. I had no control over it. It was just like moving. It's a really weird experience, which is to say, take care of yourself. Don't go to rehearsal like that, because it's not fun. Now, back to À quel dîner, which this is one of my favorite moments in the show.
So good.
Pericole and Piquillo are these poor street singers in Lima, Peru. And they're trying to get married, and they don't have enough money for the marriage license, and they're complaining to each other. They're kind of sick of each other. But right before this, they get their shit together, and they sing for the crowd these songs about love, right? Making it appear as if they are in love, even though really they're going to fight later. And after that's done, Piquillo leaves because he's like, look, I can find greener pastures other places, all right? And Pericole stops and lets him go. And then she goes to sleep, and she's starving, right? Because they're poor. And in the process of this, the viceroy comes on, and actually he was charmed by her singing. He wakes her up, and he's like, hey, do you want to be one of my ladies in waiting? And instead of like a modern woman being like, ladies? Like more than one? No, I'm not on your list. She was just enthralled by that. And it's like, yeah, I'll be one of your ladies in waiting. And so, here's the thing. Like, I got this, like, situation here. It's like a boyfriend. He's like, oh, we'll just write her a letter. So she writes him a lovely breakup letter.
Wow.
And then sends it to him. And then goes with the viceroy to dine with him and the other ladies in wait. Well, you see where this is going. She gets incredibly lit.
Yeah.
And as one does when you're sucker punched with wine, you start talking, in her case, sing, about how she knows she's tipsy, but hey, don't tell anybody I'm tipsy. Just shh, shh. Obviously, everybody knows that she's drunk off her ass.
Yeah.
And sputtering everywhere. And so it's really, really funny. And I love the version that we have to play for you. This is Alina Garancia, who is one of my favorite mezzos, especially in stuff like this. And I love that it's like a lounge singer setting.
Honestly, it's perfect. She embodies the character of the piece so well. I'm glad that you picked this particular rendition. Everybody's going to enjoy it. And she even shushes the pianist, which that's so good.
Yeah. Yes.
From a 2016 recording with Art Lounge, here is Alina Garancia singing Al Kedine from Offenbach's Pericole.
Ah, quel dîner je viens de faire et quel vent extraordinaire! J'en ai tant bu,
crois bien que maintenant je suis pas grise, ma chute. Faut pas qu'on lui dise chut, faut pas, chut.
Next up, we have some Mozart.
Yeah, hell Mozart.
Our next item on the playlist is Vivat Bacchus, a duet between Osmin and Pedrillo from Die Entführung aus dem Serail. And this is another one of his Singspiel operas. It was written in 1782. It also falls into that exotic style that was kind of becoming popular at this time, setting operas in foreign lands and all of that. So this is set in Turkey, and some of the main characters, Pasha Selim has bought 3 European slaves that were taken prisoner by pirates, and that's Constance, a young Spanish lady, Blondchen, an English maid, and Pedrillo, who is a servant of Constance's fiance Belmonte. Belmonte has traced these 3 to the Pasha's seaside palace, where Constance has become one of his new favorite concubines, basically. The Pasha has made Pedrillo his gardener and has given Blondchen to Osmin, the palace overseer. Well, Pedrillo has devised this whole plan to escape, and part of this escape plan is that he invites Osmin to drink with him, to try and get him drunk so he'll fall asleep. And Osmin, being of the faith of Islam, doesn't want to drink, but nonetheless, Pedrillo invites him and gets him to drink. And this song is about the celebration of the wine that they're drinking. Obviously, it mentions Bacchus, who was a Roman god of agriculture, wine, and fertility.
Mm-hmm.
I think the very unique thing about this is that it's very Baroque in nature. I really hear Handel. If you just heard this piece by itself, you wouldn't necessarily think it was Mozart. And that has to do with the very fast tempo, the use of a lot of melismas, and particularly the trumpets really evoke that Baroque sound out of this. So it's an incredible duet that's just super fun. And I think you're really going to enjoy the singers that you'll hear. Difference between Pedrillo being a very light lyric tenor and the Osmin is this big buffo bass.
Yeah, it's like one of the buffoest, I would say, sounding roles, if that's a term.
Yeah.
If not, I just made it up.
It's a term. We'll go
because when in his aria, he goes down and he has to hold out a low D, I think it is. And you really got to have some oomph, which means if you have some oomph down there, it's just often helps with the whole character.
Absolutely.
From the 2008 production of Die Entführung aus dem Serail in Amsterdam, we will hear Kurt Reidel as Osmin and Michael Smallwood as Pedrillo in Vivat Bacchus by Mozart.
Viva Bacchus, Liebe, Bacchus, Liebe, weiter Bacchus, Viva Bacchus, Bacchus, Liebe, Bacchus, Viva Bacchus, Bacchus, Liebe, es leben die Mädchen, die Blonden, die Grauen, sie leben.
All right. So next we have one of my favorite chorus shows I've ever been in, and this is Counterie. Counterie is Rossini. It's one of his comedic pieces, of course. He was mostly known for Barber of Seville, but this is another one that is just a riot when it's done right. And this comes from later in the show, and Counterie's men are dressed as quote-unquote pilgrims. And when I did this with Seattle Opera, this is 2016, I think. We were more like nuns, not pilgrims.
That's the same thing in the version that we're using too. It's also
yeah. And so we had all kinds of guys with the fake body stuff and all that. So it was a lot of fun. They're there at the convent and they're only drinking milk because of their lack of wine. Well, Rambo comes on, and that's not like Sylvester Stallone. That's actually his name, Rambo. It's not spelled like the movie. And he comes on and he starts talking to all the guys in Counterie about his adventures in breaking into the castle wine cellar to get enough wine for everybody, which it's a pretty big chorus. So it's a lot of wine, obviously. And obviously, once it gets broken out, a ruckus party happens, and they're just encouraging each other to keep drinking, or buvons, buvons, buvons. And so they're getting really wasted. Ragonda comes on, who is Countess Adele's servant. And so they're like, oh no, Ragonda's here. And so they go from this party to then acting like they're praying. And at first, when the quartet starts singing, because it's not the whole chorus that sings it, it's just, if I remember correctly, it's Rimbaud, the tutor, Ori, and then I forgot his servant's name, but they're singing it. And at first it sounds pretty normal, but by the end they usually give it a little bit of like, you know, being just under the pitch or sliding more because they're obviously drunk. But at the end of the day, Ragonda doesn't suspect anything because she thinks that they're all nuns and they're just praying and it's all good to go. And so she leaves and then the party continues.
You know, although it's in French and Rossini uses elements of French music throughout this piece, it still has that wonderful expectation that you have if you are someone who listens to a lot of Rossini, that the ensemble pieces are going to be just out of this world amazing. Like the layers that he adds.
Yeah.
Another composer that was really great at writing catchy tunes, right? Because I think I've only listened to this. I saw the production and then I've listened to it a couple other times. And, you know, I can hear bouffon, bouffon. I can hear the melody in my head.
Yeah, it's really catchy.
From the 2018/19 production of Le Comte Ori from Opera Royale de Wallonie and Opera Royale Château de Versailles Spectacle, we will hear Buvons, Buvons by Rossini.
We have another aria coming up. The next one is going to be from Die Fledermaus by Johannes Strauss II, not to be confused with Richard Strauss. Very different composers. This was composed in 1874, and we are going to take a listen to Chacun à son goût, which is Orlovsky's aria. Die Fledermaus is a comic opera about a practical joke that Volker and Adele play on their friend Einstein. And obviously it has to do with a Fledermaus, which is a bat. This scene in particular, Orlovsky is hosting a party, and he's known to be rather eccentric and extravagant. And he is very explicit that the people at his party should never be boring and should keep up with his drinking, or he will kick them out, or even a little bit more violently hit them over the head with a bottle.
And if you need more clues that Orlovsky has a drinking problem, you need to look no further than that last statement you just said.
He is a Russian, loves his vodka.
Yep, there you go.
And he does say that. And he also, not really implies, I mean, he just says it, that his guests can enjoy themselves in any way they like. And we are in the time of carnival in this opera. So he's talking about sexy things.
Oh, yeah.
Musically, this piece is in another dance style. Aren't we surprised? It is not a waltz, though. It is what's called a gallop dance, which was a folk dance that was the forerunner to the polka, which was very, very, very hip at this time in Vienna, which is where they are. In this aria, there are these sections where Orlovsky does these ornamenti up. Ich lade gern mir Gäste ein, man lebt bei mir, lebt fine. I always imagine it's, you know, he's a little drunk and he's hiccuping, right? And the version we have for you is just phenomenal. This mezzo, her name is Milena Ernman, and she's just fantastic in this role. Not only does she nail the characterization of like how arrogant and over the top Orlovsky is, her accent is also this great Austrian Russian mix. It's just so beautiful. I love it. And actually, in the second verse, she does some ornaments that I really love too, that I think give this aria a whole new flavor to me in particular. I'd never heard anybody ornament the second verse, and now I'm all about it. I think it's amazing. I hope you enjoy. We also have another selection in our playlist from Die Fledermaus. All around, it's a great opera.
Totally.
From the 2003 Glyndebourne Festival Opera production of Die Fledermaus, we will hear Chacun à son goût, sung by Milena Ernman as Count Orlovsky.
Ich lade gern mir Gäste ein, mal jetzt bei mir recht fein. Man hält sich, wie man mag, auf bis zum hellen Tag. Zweimal ich mich stets dabei, was auch treibt und spricht. Das, was mir aus mir steht frei, doch ich vergesse nicht.
All right, so next we have an aria from a well-known composer, but a very obscure show. And this comes from Charles Gounod, and this is Le Médecin Malgré Lui, so the doctor in spite of himself. And this show is very, very interesting, and this happens towards the beginning of it. Sgagnarelle is a, check this out, gluttonous, alcoholic lumberjack. So to say he's a hot mess is kind of an understatement. And so the problem with him is that he makes everyone miserable because not only is he all of those things, he doesn't make very much money, and when he does, he spends it on food and alcohol.
I mean,
like more than he should.
the important things in life.
Of course. At the beginning of the show, we see him arguing with his wife, Martina, and he ends up beating her, actually, a little bit. And so she leaves to plot her revenge. And he gets off stage, and while she's out, she runs into a couple who are talking about not being able to afford treatment for their daughter's illness. And because Martina, is quick on her feet, she convinces them that Sgagnarelle is an amazing doctor, which, of course, as we all know, he is not. But she says this, but in order for Sgagnarelle to admit that he's a doctor, they have to, and this is so demonic, but it's brilliant at the same time, they have to beat him up in order for him to admit that he's this doctor and ultimately care for their daughter. In case you needed any further proof that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, well, there you go. She just really goes for it. Meanwhile, Sgagnarelle, once that thing happens, he comes back on stage, and he is getting all drunk, as his usual schedule is. And he comes out and he's talking about his love for not only wine, but the bottles of wine that he has. And he says that they're so sweet. And then he goes, qu'ils sont doux. When he does this little revolving thing, he's talking about the sweetness of it. And then when it switches into like the B section of each verse, he goes into his disdain for marriages and all this stuff. And so the one thing I really love melodically and musically about this is that Gounod does a really great job of the bubbliness of the drinking. Not just the like bubbles like in champagne or whatever. He literally has Sgagnarelle go glue, glue, glue like he's chugging. Right?
Yeah.
You'll notice that in the clip, it's actually me. This is from when I did a program in France a few years ago. And what's cool about this performance, for me at least, this was in some church in the middle of the French countryside that was built in like 1200, number one. But number two, I whenever I would do this, I did have like empty wine bottles or whatever that I would use as props. But we didn't have any left over at our place that we were staying. So I had to like actually buy wine for this
What a shame.
thing. I know. It was rough. The very tail end, because I would hide the bottles, right, to find them. The tail end is this small bottle that I had in my pocket that has actual wine in it. It's a little behind the scene stuff there. It's a fun one, and it's not done very often, but
I'm glad that you chose to showcase this aria. I think it sounds great and really, really kind of a gem of an aria.
Next up, we will hear Michael Heitman, our co-host here on Opera Unbound, sing Qu'ils sont doux from Le Médecin malgré lui by Gounod.
Next, we have the infamous Elysir duet between Nemorino and Adina. In this moment, Nemorino has, well, at the very beginning of the duet, it's mostly him. And he finally gets the love potion from Dulcamara, and he starts to drink it, and he feels it kicking in, and it kicks in real quick, to the point where he's like already la 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 la, going in his own world, singing. And then he sees Adina, and he's like, oh, no, I can't. It's Adina. Wait a minute. Oh, yes, I can. Because I have the elixir. And so now she's going to go for me. And he's convinced that he'll be able to get her because of the elixir. Meanwhile, at this point, Adina actually is more annoyed with him than anything else. But sometimes we fall in love with people who annoy the shit out of us. That does happen from time to time. So maybe this is the beginning of it. I don't know. Maybe you should come to our production of Elixir when it happens.
Yes.
To see the end of the show.
Just a little bit about how things are going with our Elixir production. So we are currently at 25% funded. Mike and I are going to do a live stream on New Year's Eve, December 31st at 7 p.m. Mark your calendars. We're going to do that live stream on YouTube, and what we are doing is we are taking arias and a couple duets, and we are putting them with guitar. Both Mike and I play guitar, so we're going to play while singing, and it's going to be a great way for you to enjoy your early evening on New Year's before the ball drops. And our goal during this live stream is to raise $2,500. We have a couple of matching pledges for this event. If you're one of our listeners and you aren't one of our patrons, you can always consider becoming one of our patrons to help support this podcast and this production, or you can just donate directly to us for enjoying the live stream and putting money towards our Elixir production. That's my plug.
And just so people know, like, it'll be, like she said, traditional arias and duets and stuff like that. But both Rachel and I wanted to make it fun and do some non-traditional arrangements of the opera arias. It's not just gonna, if you're one of those people like, oh, well, it's just with guitar. Okay, sure, that sounds cool. There's gonna be some really cool stuff in there. And I'm not just saying that because obviously I have a vested interest to say that. There legitimately is some really cool arrangements that we've put together. And I'm looking forward to it, and I think everybody will enjoy it.
From the 1991 Metropolitan Opera production of Les Yeux d'Amore by Donizetti, we will hear Luciano Pavarotti and Kathleen Battle sing a selection from Caro Elysir.
La 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 bordonsette. La 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 la. Finora amor non sente. Finora amor non sente.
I don't think we could round out this list in any other way than to end it with Beer's No Doubt, a Gift from Heaven from The Bartered Bride by Smetana.
Yes. Yes.
The Bartered Bride is a comic opera in 4 acts and uses common tropes such as mistaken identity, misunderstood motives, and to reach an ending where love really does conquer all. The story centers around a love story being endured by Marenka and Yenik in a small village. This particular piece that we're talking about happens at the beginning of Act 2. The men are in a tavern, and Yenik and Kegel are arguing the merits of love and money over beer. This piece is just, I don't know, I love it on so many levels. Yeah, beer is pretty awesome, one. But this opera, I actually haven't seen this opera in its entirety, and I'm really motivated to after hearing this piece, because Smetana, just the way that he uses folk melodies and dance music from what is now the Czech Republic, weaves it into every piece in this opera. And this piece in particular also features these rich choral harmonies that you hear a lot in Slavic music. This is only a men's chorus plus the main characters. Oh my gosh, I get goosebumps even listening to it on YouTube, which I don't often get goosebumps unless it's live singing. It's just, I wanted to read the whole translation of this one because it's in Czech, so you're probably not going to get any of the words. So it says, beer's no doubt a gift from heaven. It chases away worries and troubles and imports strength and courage to men. Without beer, we should cut a poor figure. There's so much trouble in the world that foolish is he who cares too much. Their toast to beer and toast to you enjoying the holidays with our lovely playlist.
From the 2019 production of The Bartered Bride by Smetana with Garingston Opera, we will hear Brendan Gunnell as Yenik and Joshua Bloom as Kekal, with the chorus and orchestra conducted by Jacques Van Steen. Here is Beer is a Gift from God.
In addition to these 10 songs, 10 pieces, we have 15 others. We've got the Brindisi from Verdi's Macbeth. We have chorus from Faust by Gounod, the Vin or Ire, the Champagne finale from Fledermaus, and I did find a couple English ones. A piece from The Student Prince called Drink, Drink, Drink. There is an excerpt from The Sorcerer by Gilbert and Sullivan. And from one of the first English operas, Fill Every Cup from The Beggar's Opera by John Gay.
Oh, nice.
Some amazing pieces for you to listen to while you enjoy your meal and drinks.
And distract yourself from the other terrible things that may be going on in the world, or maybe even in your own life. You know,
Absolutely.
music's a great outlet to put your mind on a shelf for a little bit. These will definitely be a good way to do that.
Thanks for listening to this podcast episode. For more information about the podcast or for extras, check out our Patreon page, www.patreon.com/operaunbound. Ciao!